Alafia, thank you for tuning in. You're listening to Everyday Odu. In this episode, we caught up with Professor Anita Diop, founder of the African Roots and Heritage Foundation, who recently returned to the States after an extended visit to Cameroon, where she organized the New African Thought Sertatola International Congress. During our conversation, Professor Diop recapped the Congress for us, shared some of the next steps for the New African Thought and the African Renaissance. She also shared some profound experiences and revelations that came out of her trip. Professor Diop recapped the Congress for us, shared some of the next steps for the New African Thought and the African Renaissance. She also shared some profound experiences and revelations that came out of her trip. I hope you enjoy the conversation. Peace and blessings. Backseat to the king. I totally get it.
I'm sorry.
No, not at all. Not at all.
And I thought it would be a quick conversation, but he actually, I think we talked like almost an hour or maybe more than an hour.
Okay. I was actually wondering if there was anything you could share from your conversation with the king.
No, that would be like really private.
Okay. I respect that, but I just wanted to ask.
Well, I can share this. My birthday is in February.
Uh-huh.
I'll be celebrating my 60th, and the king said that he will come.
Oh, wow. He's going to come to the States and celebrate with you?
Yes.
That's really nice. Oh.
So I can share that.
Thank you. Thank you for that tidbit. 60 is a great milestone. Congratulations to you on this year. Has just been fabulous, has it not?
Yes, it has. It was a fairy tale, really a fairy tale. I could not have imagined any of the events that took place. Everything was magical. Yeah. And I thoroughly enjoyed it and did not want to come back home.
Well, I saw some of the photos, and it certainly looked magical and fairy tale like, and I don't blame you at all. Then you come back over here and it's cold and
right. Have to wash my own dishes, cook my own food, drive myself everywhere. Wait a minute. Like you go to heaven and then they say, okay, get out of here, and you drop back down to earth.
Oh, that's so funny. So whose life is this? This is no longer my life. I am the queen now.
Right. And then the Americans said, oh, well, your Cinderella story is over. She said, your car has turned into a pumpkin. Your clothes are raggedy.
So I still got my glass slippers. Whenever I want to put them on, I'll hop back on the plane.
I said, wow, you all are just busting my bubble. But it was my fairy tale. I lived it, and I enjoyed it.
Good.
So.
We'll leave it to family to humble you and get you settled and grounded. And you know, I want to welcome you back to the States, welcome you home.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's really nice to talk to you. Now we're on the same time zone.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't want to keep you too long, but I did want to catch up on some of the events in Cameroon. We didn't get a chance to catch up since the conference. And after the conference, you were crowned queen of the Bailing people.
Yes.
And I wanted to talk about the ceremony. I saw that they presented you with some beautiful gifts. I wondered what those were. But if we could take it step by step and talk about the conference. Your comments at the conference, at the Sertatola International Conference in Cameroon. It was a very moving speech, giving an aspect of the African American experience as it relates to reconnecting with one's source through the ancestors.
Mm-hmm.
And then it also occurred to me that I see a lot of Africans going through that transition.
Mm-hmm.
it seems that we are reconnecting with our ancestors and our source as our truth to help us move forward. So I wanted to get your thoughts about how that connects to the New African Thought, and also just in general with the conference, what were some of the takeaways from the conference, action items?
Okay. First of all, the New African Thought is born out of the call from the ancestors to bring forth that African Renaissance. In order for us to go forward, the children of the diaspora, as well as the children on the continent, must find a common meeting ground. And in finding that common meeting ground, we have to recognize what are our barriers and what are the things that keep us from mastering our own destiny. So the New African Thought is going to be a roadmap given to the African. And when I say the African, all those of African descent, no matter where you are born. The purpose is to raise the level of consciousness in understanding where we have been, where we currently are, and what it'll take for us to go forward. The mind is the beginning of civilization. The mind and the way you think determines whether or not you'll be successful or not. As we Sankofa, which means to go back and pick up the gems, we examine the invisible that manifests in the visible. So the mind, our mind is in the invisible. That is the factory of creation. So when we purpose our mind, create the right thought patterns in our mind, break the shackles off of our mind that have been chained up through slavery and colonialism, breaking the spell generationally of religion, breaking the spell of subjugation, oppression, and the like, then we're able to emerge and feed and nurture ourselves that we may clearly have self-determination, self-identification, self-love, self-creation to bring forth that new African glory through the African Renaissance. We have to have a new thought for a new day and a new way to conduct ourselves as individuals, as communities, as countries, as a continent.
I know you had about 50 speakers at the conference, looked at some of the names, and I noticed that a lot of the participants were from academia, a lot of professors from universities, but I wondered if you had any participation or support from any industries or financial institutions.
That's a good question. And that is one of the things that was addressed during the conference, because it was, as some people say, the elites, these scholars, right, and even the religious sector felt that they were left out. So this is one of the plan of actions for the next conference, is to include the other sectors of society. Mm-hmm. So we, the scholars, the thinkers, the philosophers, we birth the New African Thought. And now we're opening it up to the other sectors, because we realize it's going to take every one of us to have an input in order for all of us to be successful.
Absolutely. Yeah, I noticed that there is an increased interest internationally in investment in Africa. I saw the Chinese president recently reduced Kenya's debt by tens of millions of dollars. The UK Prime Minister earmarked funds for African women business owners. There's just a lot of initiatives and hands going into Africa to with the intent to uplift it and for it to become more self-reliant. And also, what hasn't been left out of the conversation, thankfully, there are some wrongs, if you will, from the past that need to be set right.
Exactly. Absolutely. One of the things that was brought up is how we can position ourselves to not be recolonized. As you mentioned, China has monetary interests in Africa. And a lot of the deals that China is bringing, it's almost like a trick. We'll bring you this, but we're going to take that. And what they take in return is far greater than what they give. And this is some of the mental traps and strategies that African leaders have fallen into because they don't have the right mind. Anytime you go into negotiations, if you negotiate a contract and you're on the losing end, that contract was not negotiated properly. And this is where that new mind, that new African thought has to penetrate the policymakers, the contract negotiators, our heads of state, our ambassadors, those that's in power to make a difference internationally with our foreign interests. So it's very imperative that going forward, we have to have a new mind. I gave an example. I don't know if you've seen this particular clip, but I gave the example of the country of Senegal, how they discovered gold and their mind went to, we don't know how to mine the gold, so we're going to get a foreign company to come and mine our gold. And in the contract was a 90-10 split, that the foreign investors can come in and get 90% of the profits, and the country itself will get 10%. That's a bad contract, okay? Because even if you don't have the skills and the abilities, that gold had been sitting there for God knows how many centuries. So what if it would take you 10 years to train your own people in every facet of mining gold? If it sat there another 10 years, it did not matter. If you're going to allow foreigners to come and take 90% of the profits, you could have waited those 10 years and had people properly trained to mine your gold, to trade your gold, to process the gold, every facet of mining. So the rush for Africa seems to be folded money. They say, okay, well, we'll get someone to mine their gold and we'll get folded money. Folded money seems to be more valuable than the actual resource itself. That's because of that mind that has been hoodwinked and bamboozled. Like in the case of Sierra Leone, they sold China a 250-mile coastline for the purposes of fishing. China now owns the coastline of Sierra Leone. They're going to take all the fish and sell it back to the Sierra Leoneans for God knows what type of price. When if whoever negotiated that contract, they're like, they want our coastline for the purpose of fishing. Obviously, that's a good product. Why don't we incorporate our fishermen and mass produce the fish or mass sell the fish back to China? But that folded money seemed to be more appealing than actually putting the people to work and negotiating a deal to sell the fish back to China, which the profits would have been far greater. But now they don't have a coastline, and the minute they won't even have a country. Sierra Leone is not that big. You see? So it was a bad mind. Now, those that did the contract, they're looking at most likely themselves and their family. Oh, they'll become rich. But what about the country? What about the fishermen that actually use that coastline for their livelihood? You just put all of them out of business. You just made them poor. Because if you can go down to the fish, you can go down to the water, get some fish, you got dinner, breakfast, and lunch. But now if it's in somebody else's hands, those people can't just freely go to that water and get their livelihood like they used to. So that was a bad deal. That was a bad mind that made that deal. So these are the types of chains that have to be broken, the spells that have to be broken off of our people, off of our leaders, and recognize that folded money is nothing, but the actual resource is the value. So it has to come a retraining of the mind.
Absolutely. Did you have economists speak at the conference?
I don't believe so.
I was just thinking of, some of the specialties that, would need to come together and formulate the plans. Because, for instance, there is this inter-Africa free trade agreement that's happening where the African countries can trade amongst themselves. The theory is without as much red tape and bureaucracy, and therefore they can benefit in that exchange.
Right.
But that's been going on for at least a decade, and the implementation of it hasn't really come to fruition. We need economists to be a part of the plan making and think down the line what are the possible barriers and blockages, so that we have these great ideas and great goals, but what are the barriers that we're going to face so that we need to push through so that we can see progress.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
The health sector has actually seen great benefits. I just wrote a piece on how the healthy life expectancy has gone up 10 years in the past 10 years in Africa. And that's because, they have invested in building up the healthcare system, also the payers, right? The insurance companies and reimbursement. You definitely need the minds and you need the industry to come together and formulate these plans and work together, and so we can see benefits for Africa. Well, I love what you're doing, Miss Anita. How did the crowning come about? Did you know that you were going to go down there and be crowned?
No, I didn't know anything. We were at the conference, and the I'll call him the docent of the Lang Museum. Mm-hmm. He had a booth, and I don't know if you've seen a picture where I had this big feathered crown on my head. It was his crown. Mm-hmm. And my assistants, when I went, they had a photo booth right next to his booth. And so I went to take pictures in there. So my assistant said, "Oh, can she put this on her head?" And he said, "That's reserved for the queen. Only the queen can wear that." And she said, "She is a queen." And so didn't think much about it. I put the crown on my head and took the pictures. Mm-hmm. And so the next day, the man's name is Hillary. The next day, Hillary came and said, "Oh, Madam Anita," he said, "I spoke to the king about you." Mm. And he was so taken that he gave me the authority to crown you queen right now. Wow. And I'm like, huh? What? And so he said, and these, he gave me a bag, mm-hmm. Which is a traditional bag. He said, "This bag is for the Mafo," and that's the name for queen, Mafo, yeah. Because the king's title is Fo. And so the queen's is Mafo. Gotcha. And so he gave me that and about 3 other things. So he gave me, I don't know, it's like a fan. Mm-hmm. And what else? It was something else. Oh, some bangles. Mm-hmm. In their traditional cloth, which is called Ndap. Okay. And so he said the big festival is in December, and we want you to come in December, and he will make a formal ceremony to you and present you to the people. Wow. And I said, wow, I won't be able to be here in December. I'm scheduled to leave the end of November. And so then he said, well, can you come, to the kingdom? And I said, well, tell me, where it is, and I'll talk to the driver and find out, the logistics and everything, and I'll let you know. So I made the arrangements, and I went, I think that was November the 18th, to actually meet the king. And I was, calling home, telling my girlfriends about it. Say, it's going to be a shriveled up old man, and, he's going to, say, okay, go to the bed chambers.
Oh, no.
No. So I contacted Hillary. I'm like, Hillary, what do you mean by queen? I mean, tell me what you mean. I need you to explain this to me, because I no. And so he said, just trust me. I'm like, no, you need to explain, what do you mean by queen? Right. And so I got two ladies, two of my assistants, to travel with me, because I did not want the situation be, because it is that in some kingdoms, if the king said he wanted you for a wife, that was it. You was his wife.
Okay.
And I had to have witnesses and a way to escape.
Always have a backup plan, right?
Right. Because he wouldn't really explain. And I'm like, I'm not trying to be his wife, And so when I got there and met him, oh my God, to me, he was just like knockout gorgeous. He was overly excited to meet me, which made me feel real good. And we just had some good conversation, and he was very straightforward. And he said, yes means yes. He said, when Hillary called me and told me that he met a responsible woman, something in my spirit overtook me and said, make this woman your wife. And I'm like, huh? And he said, so yes means yes. When Hillary told me, I said yes. And now that you're here in my presence, I'm saying yes. I want you to be my wife.
Really?
So, yes. So I said, wait a minute. He said, did I say something wrong? I'm like, no. I said, this is just hitting me, real fast and everything. And he said, well, I don't want to waste your time, and I don't want you to waste my time. He said, so what is your vision of a queen? I said, well, in Ghana, they have these queen positions that's, queen of the community, right, but not necessarily associated with the throne.
Right.
And he said, okay. He said, we will start out the way you want it. You will be a queen of the community. He said, but I guarantee you, by the end of the day, you will be my wife.
Wow.
He said, I want you to feel this in your spirit. I'm like, yes. Yeah. Oh my God. I'm like, yes. And I could not even post the pictures that really, there was just so much synergy between us. I'm like, yes, God, yes.
Yeah. I could tell he was very accommodating and respectful and dignified in his interaction with you, just from the pictures that you did show, when he's presenting the gifts and things like that. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. So he gave me, first he gave me the royal beads, the necklace for the mafo. And then he gave me a calabash that's only for the mafo. And it's decorated in cowrie shells and beads. Very beautiful. And I told him immediately, I said, my mother is going to love this. So when I take this home, know that it's with me, but this is my mother's. Because I just knew she would love it, right? And of course, that's the first thing she took out of the suitcase. And he gave me a statue, which is a statue of the masquerade, which are the spiritual dancers.
Yes,
and he said that he would explain that more, during the festival, which I hate that I'm not going to be able to be there because I really want to be there. But what was beautiful, And he gave me some other gifts. He gave me and both of the ladies that came with me cloth that they're going to be wearing at the festival. And I had my dress made before I left. So I'll put it on, put my makeup on, take pictures in it. And on the day of the festival, the opening day of the festival, and I'll send it to him. So I'll be there in spirit. Wow. But all the gifts total, I had to get a whole new suitcase. And it weighed in at exactly 50 pounds. That's 50 pounds worth of gifts because I had cloth, shoes, jewelry. Someone made a wood carving of Cameroon and a pencil holder. But it's big. Beautiful. It's a beautiful piece to go on my desk. Two things I want to share with you. One I wrote about on Facebook was the 8-day week. And I'm going to write an article when I get around to it about the 8-day week. That was just so astonishing to me because, we're in the West. We have the 7-day week, and we hear about the Jewish calendar and the Roman calendar. But I never heard of the African calendar. And I asked about the 8 days. And the 8 days deal with the Judgment Day. So the first 7 days of the week, people, handle their business, do whatever. And then on the 8th day, that's a day of reflection and a day that the people judge the king. If he held himself up properly or, if they have any issues against him, that's the day that they will bring that up because it's for the kingdom. It's for the development and the building of the kingdom. And so I went on to ask, well, if you have 8 days in the week, how many days are in the month? And the response was that some months have as little as 20 days and some months have as many as 45 days. And I asked why, and they said, we as humans, we don't revolve around time. Time revolves around us. And when he said that, they gave a whole new dimension to the thought of what people call CP time. And it's deeper than that because he said, like, with the 45-day month, that month is the seeding and harvest time. So the days are exacted upon the work that you must do to feed yourself. And so when it's not harvest time, the months are shorter because there's less things for you to do. So time revolves around the African. African do not revolve around time, which is the total opposite of Western thought, where, everything revolves around time. Time is money, money is time, and if you're not on time, you're late. But what is perceived as lateness in the Western view is right on time in the African view. So I learned two different worldviews, a different worldview, and how you conceptualize time. Time is a tool, just like you use a car to get from A to B. You use time to do what you need to do. Yes, exactly. So I remember John in BT talked about time in the Zamani. And I'm going to go back and revisit that because maybe it'd bring me a different understanding than when I read him the first time so many years ago. And then the second thing that I wasn't able to record is the medicine and how in ancient medicines, if a person had a sickness or illness that the medicine person didn't know or was familiar with, what they would do is draw blood from that person and they would sprinkle the blood in the grass for the animals, for the animals to eat. And the animals would eat the grass. And he explained that their system automatically knows how to heal itself. Unlike the human body, we have a different level of intelligence. We don't know, but instinctively, they know what root or herb or bark to eat to bring their system whole again for whatever that illness is. So what they would do is they would follow the animal to wherever he would go to eat the food. So I just thought that was just remarkable how they use the animals to determine which roots or herbs to use on humans. And I said, oh, that's where animal testing came from.
That's the first animal testing, huh?
Yeah.
And this is what the Baling people do?
Yes.
Because I know in Yoruba, as a contrast, so they have a 5-day calendar. And, yeah, but that's centered around worship of the Orisha. And then as far as the medicines, the Babalaos, they usually do a divination. A client will come to them with the ailment and they'll do a divination, and then they'll interpret the Odu and get what herbs, and they'll make a Ifa Koshe. The client would ingest that. Yeah, but I haven't heard about the animals before. That is really interesting how they use them.
And it makes sense.
It does.
And I'm not a scientist, but it makes sense. And the blood, bears the disease. The animal ingests it, and their system thinks, okay, go get this to counteract what's happening in your body. I'm like, okay, animal testing, yeah.
Oh, I love the restaurant that you were at where you get to sit in the water. Like the table is in the water. I said, oh, that is just amazing.
Yes, it was. And that visit was extra special as well. I didn't post about that one, but I did put it on my website. The owner of the restaurant is the paramount chief of SWA. And she's a lady, and she's known as the female king. And we were sitting down after we had, did our little photo shoot. And she came and introduced herself to me. And so I pulled out my card, and I was telling her that I had just finished up the conference about the new African thought in preserving culture and traditions. And she jumped up and ran away, and I said, did I say something wrong? They said, no, she's going to get something. I'm like, oh, okay. And she came back with the king's outfit, and she put it on me. And she said that because of the work that I'm doing, she's given me the honorary title of the woman king. And that's called a cuckoo man in that area.
Beautiful. So you came back a queen and a king. Okay.
Yes. I said, but the king part, that's too much for people.
Well, actually, there's a movie about it, right? The Woman King.
Right. And then, men are all up in arms, and, so I said, nah, I said, they can't handle that.
Oh, okay. I see. That's why you didn't post it.
Right. And you have to know your audience.
You work so many years selflessly, to uplift the African community, to uplift the African American community. It's your life's work. And without that work, many people would not have a connection to, their ancestral lines, to who they really are. If you think about it, we're the only people who have that kind of disconnect. Mm-hmm. Yeah, even the Africans in Africa, they get segregated from who they are. Their traditions are demonized. Even to this day, are forced to adapt cultures and traditions that aren't their own.
I wanted to speak to the issue of Christianity and also Islam, but specifically Christianity in this particular case. Now I had one king give me the full press. I had a second king that gave me a fuller press. And the second king. I met him at the university. One of the times I was invited there. We talked. That's when he told me that he was a king. And that he was a new king. He's only been a king about 6 months. But he was a pastor of a church. And because of Christianity, he was vacillating on giving up his kingdom because of the church. And he said, finally, something deep inside of him stood up and shook the shackles of Christianity off of him and made him realize that this is his heritage.
Right, exactly.
And his heritage is much greater than any form of religion. I said, wow, you caught that just in time, huh? So yeah, I mean, it's a stronghold on the people, and it has to be broken off, and it is. Just like it rose up in him, it rose up in me. It's rising up. The original African God is rising up. And another thing that's unique about this man and his people, I had heard about them, but this is the first time I'm meeting one. When you hear the history of the Bachanga people or the Fang Beti people, they do not classify themselves as humans. They classify themselves as gods. I said, you all need to say this louder and make people know. And so I said, I need you to tell me about this God part. So their idea is truly that they're creators. And they can't be subject to the same laws as men or humans. And I was intrigued because I've always heard groups say, oh, we're gods having a human experience. I've always heard that. But to hear it from the people whose heritage it has so much more power and so much more impact. That we are. Yes, they're living it. That's their family story. So I said what I wanted to do with him is to write or do a documentary so we can publish and make this information known. And I believe it can help raise the vibration in erecting us. So it was a beautiful trip, beautiful information. Now the task is to get it into a format that can be shared with the masses.
Now that you're back in the States, there's a lot of work and focus that needs to be done. So sometimes, it's good to be in a quiet space where there's less activity, that's more mundane, that can allow you that space to be creative and organize your ideas and thoughts and implement an action plan.
Definitely.
Thank you so much for being open and sharing your experiences the way that you have. It gives I think those who see it hope on what they can accomplish and how they can bring what they have to give into the world.
Exactly. Yeah.
So when we are living our truth and really putting our energy into all of ourselves into something, it's contagious. It really sparks a flame.
Mm-hmm. And I feel elevated. Mm-hmm. I haven't pinpointed it yet, but I feel elevated and I feel stronger. And it's just a feeling that I had the other day. Just since I got back home, I'm feeling it. And I'm like, okay, all right, whatever this is, thank you. I receive it. I'm growing into it. I'm going to be it. Whatever that is, I can feel it. I just feel stronger and more elevated.
Miss Anita, it's my fault. It's been a tremendous pleasure speaking with you again. Thank you so much for your time, for your openness.
You're welcome. You're very, very welcome. And thank you for being the person that you are.